Well, the idea of this session was to first reflect on some crucial preconditions that museums have to make sure they in a way observe to carry out intercultural work effectively, and that is first shifting the emphasis from conceiving heritage as substance to conceiving heritage as a process. Second, to look at the museum not only as a place of conservation, but first and foremost as a place of interaction and shared meaning making. And thirdly, conceive intercultural education not so much as an education to difference, as a transformative practice. So these three concepts were explored in the first part of the session to provide a theoretical basis framework into which training course participants could then carry on to reflect on the case studies. I provided examples to explore how the different responses of museums to the growing diversity of their audiences, how differently they have interpreted this new task, this new challenge. And I also outlined weaknesses and strengths of these prevailing approaches. And the third part of the session was dedicated to exploring experimental strands of practice. So that is to say, projects which have been carried out in Italian museums, but of course which have an interesting lesson to teach to all museum professionals, not only in Italy, which take into account those three preconditions I talked about in the first part of the session. So how intercultural dialogue was encouraged as a process and not as a goal to be attained in some distant future, and how it could happen between people, between real individuals. This was basically the rationale behind the session. Well, I think that the topics, the issues I touched in the three parts of the session are very important for museum professionals because they show how difficult it is to really understand what implications intercultural work has got in a museum. I mean, as I showed in the second part of the session, talking about prevailing approaches to the promotion of intercultural dialogue, I've also showed how easy it is to, there are misunderstandings about what intercultural dialogue is really about, intercultural mediation of heritage is about. And I think that by going through this journey of seeing, important, crucial preconditions and seeing, what are the mainstream approaches to this kind of topic, and then identifying what are really experimental strands of practice is a very, very practical way of showing the difference between approaches, not to suggest that some of them are not correct and others are, but to state very clearly, if you want to carry out an intercultural project, mediating heritage in an intercultural perspective, then this is what you should be doing. I mean, there are many ways of doing it, but to make very clear what is and what isn't an intercultural way of going about mediating heritage.